okay, listen, this is how much oil we have. This is how much we know we have. I get it. There's a lot of distractions right now. There's a little bit of a corruption scandal, a big corruption scandal. There's a lot of other issues in our country right now. But I'm going to declare this emergency, and we're going to hyper-focus everybody to make sure that we never get to the point where we're all screwed. Our gas prices are, by the way, are already amongst the most expensive in the world to the consumer right now. In the last 20 years, lines of communication have broken down. This is why the US is so politically divided. This is probably why places like the Philippines is also very politically divided. Innovation can be trendy. Like, it's like, oh yeah, blockchain. NFTs, let's
digital
go.
land.
Yeah, digital land. Metaverse, right? 60 billion into the metaverse.
That's a lot of money.
So that was an innovation, and it was, in my mind, very trendy. And now the trend is gone, and so is all that money. And I like to say we invest in solutions because we want to invest in things that Filipinos need, no matter what the cycle is.
Yeah.
Welcome to Brave. Learn from Southeast Asia's best tech leaders. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. No BS on success. I'm Jeremy Au, venture capitalist, serial founder, Harvard MBA, science fiction nerd, and dad of 2 daughters. Every week, we debate startup news, interview changemakers, answer listener questions, and share personal insights. Join our movement of over 40,000 members and get transcripts, resources, and community at www.bravesea.com. Stay well and stay brave.
Hey, Franco, welcome back to the show in person.
Thank you very much, man. I'm so glad to be able to see you in person. The last time we did this was actually online, so it's great. Welcome to Manila.
Yeah, thank you so much. Always good to be having fun and chit-chatting and shooting the breeze with you as well.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because your last show, you went viral.
I know.
You were comparing, I think, the speed of incorporation in Singapore versus the Philippines.
Yes.
And it turns out that a lot of Filipinos were very unhappy as small, medium enterprise owners about this state of affairs.
Yes. Well, I am happy to tell you it's exactly the same. It's exactly, nothing has changed. I think all the feedback that you got in that one very viral clip was true.
Yeah.
I think it became viral because what I said resonated with the Filipino population. This is the problem. I saw some of the comments, and some of the comments were saying, yeah, it's actually quite fast if you go online. But the reality is, it's fast, but then there's like 4 or 5 different other requirements that you need.
Yeah.
And that's the same case, by the way. It still takes forever to close a business in this country.
Insane. Yeah. And I think it was interesting because at that time we were discussing it as something that came up, as an anecdote that you felt something could improve on. But I think looking at the comments, I think hearing about how many people's experiences where they had to run from department to department, people work, duplicate, cancellations. And also some commenters were talking about how they actually had to bribe in order to get the paperwork process eventually closed. That was quite an eye-opening set of insights for me because I'm not a Filipino small medium enterprise owner who has to incorporate. So I thought it was an interesting learning moment for me as well.
Yeah, there's opportunity in digitization in that case. I think there's a lot of gray areas, and I think that's where the paperwork exists, and that's why things like bribes happen in this country. But I also see it as opportunity. If we can start getting the government, and the government's trying, to digitize a lot of the processes, then of course a lot of that corruption goes away.
Yeah, because there's no way to gum up the process.
There's no way to gum up the process. You can't slow it down.
Yeah,
this is literally algorithms doing everything for you. Really should be the case anyway.
Yeah. Why make small, medium enterprise life harder when it's already hard,
100%.
Yeah, and you're creating jobs, you're giving people a livelihood, you're letting them feed their family, and don't make things slow and hard for them. Jesus.
100%, 100%. And I think the Philippines went through an experience last year. I guess we're still going through it right now, where there was some corruption issues that were happening in the country. Again, I think I see that as an opportunity to clean up. Do you know what I mean? If you think about, I use Gemini for this, by the way. If you think about corruption scandals and how that actually affects countries, and of course, I put in a biased prompt. I said, what are the positive outcomes that come out of corruption scandals historically? Because I'm a positive guy. Gemini actually told me that in the best case scenario, within a year, things look much better. And what is the best case scenario? High profile arrests, processes are cleaned up, all this different stuff. And in the worst case scenario, it takes 5 years. But in both scenarios, there is actually a bump in productivity. In other words, the government money in the case of the Philippines right now, it's
Yeah.
most likely the government money is
Yeah.
actually being spent in the right places because the folks who were maybe doing the funny stuff before, a little scared or
They
not
should
here.
be, yeah.
And that actually means that there is an allocation of capital that is being spent where it's supposed to be spent. So right now in the Philippines, yeah, I think I would say that there's a lot of people saying this is BS. There's a lot of anger around this whole corruption issue that happened last year, 2025. But I do want to say that my belief is that at the very least, if it's not all the capital that was supposed to go into the right projects last year, at least a small part of it is going into the right projects this year. And that's already a change. That's already a positive change. Right? Now, of course, there's a lot more momentum that we need to have moving forward. We do need to put the right people in jail. We do need to correct the processes to take out some of this gray area, some of this corruption. But if we just kind of like inch our way forward to that, where every dollar or peso in this case is being spent in the right place versus the wrong, then that's already accretive
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
to the country's GDP.
Yeah.
Instead of it going into somebody's pocket or into a Louis Vuitton bag,
Yeah.
it's going into a road.
Yeah.
Just $1. And so I think of it as, Gemini helped me think about it this way, but I think of it as, okay, good. It's now out in the open. Great. Now let's fix it.
Yeah.
Right? The big question is, are we going to do everything right to fix it, to make it 100%, to make it like corruption free? Can we get there? I'm pretty sure most people will say no. I don't think we can ever get 100%.
Yeah.
But whatever, it's better than zero. It's better than $0 going into our infrastructure and our economy, which is probably where it's at right now.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you about that. I think it's about growing the pie together.
Yeah.
And having more pie to share with everybody.
That's right.
And speaking about all of this in the economy right now, as it's flying in, and the news just came in about the Philippines declaring emergency around energy. I believe it's the first in Asia to announce.
Potentially the world.
Yeah, potentially the world.
To announce a national emergency.
Yeah. So what's the context here? Yeah.
We were joking about this before we were taping, but the reality is that the Philippines is not an oil-producing nation. The reality is that I think I read it's 20% of all the oil that goes through the Strait of Hormuz actually winds up in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And so the reality is that the Philippines does not have a stable supply of oil. I think what's good, and I'm always an optimist, I think what's good about this is that the president got ahead of it.
Yeah.
And said, okay, listen, this is how much oil we have. This is how much we know we have. I get it. There's a lot of distractions right now. There's this, what we just talked about. There's a little bit of a corruption scandal, a big corruption scandal. There's a lot of other issues in our country right now. But I'm going to declare this emergency, and we're going to hyper-focus everybody to make sure that we never get to the point where it's like, where we're all screwed, basically, where our gas prices are, by the way, are already amongst the most expensive in the world to the consumer right now.
Yeah.
And I think he wanted to get ahead of it so that it doesn't affect our power. It doesn't affect our food. It doesn't affect anything. Remains to be seen. We're in the middle of it right now. I have high hopes that things are going to turn around well. Yeah. Again, I'm always an optimist. I have high hopes that the government is working very hard to make sure that we're always secured of our oil. Just today, they announced, of course, 22 million new barrels that had arrived onshore. So they secured that. And then almost every day, the government is announcing, actually literally, how many new barrels they're securing. That's something interesting. As a private citizen, I never knew how many barrels we would get anyway. And to have this, it's almost like what happened in COVID, right? During COVID, it was, okay, this is how many cases we have, blah, 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 blah. These is how many people are in the hospital, this is how many people are out. And as a private citizen, you're thinking about this as, okay, we're getting better, we're getting worse, at least we're fully informed. And in this case, I feel pretty well informed.
Right.
I feel like I know how many barrels are coming, how many days extra we have. Like, that's a good thing. Right.
Yeah.
And hopefully with that transparency, by the way, transparency is probably a big word today in the Philippines. With that transparency, the government itself will continue to act as efficiently as it possibly can in the context of the Philippine government. It's cool too, right? I was just telling you earlier, one of our own oil fields, the president just announced that there was a successful mining of it, and it should be fully online by fourth quarter of this year. That's natural gas, right? So one can already see that there's some security happening.
Right.
Even though it's a little bit far out,
Yeah.
at least there's some security in the midterm.
Yeah. So lots to unpack there. The first thing I would say for sure is that I think declaring a national emergency on energy takes political courage. I think it was not an easy decision. For me, from my vantage point, looking at all the news, obviously there's some countries that are okay, right? Looking at Malaysia and Brunei, They're energy exporters. So I don't think there's going to be a national emergency for them. But I think that the amount of ducking and weaving that some governments are doing, or is that a problem or not a problem? And obviously you see all the caveats, which just depends on how long the crisis is, etc. But I think you just had to recognize that saying better to be prepared for the worst case now and manage your reserves, get people focused early is probably better than declaring this later.
100%. 100%. I think most people in the Philippines will agree that this was the right decision to make for him to declare this now.
Yeah.
At this point in time, we're also a very politically divided nation. But I think this is probably one of those decisions where actually most people will say, yeah, actually, that's probably the right thing. But like this oil crisis is not under our control. This is not, we did not make this oil crisis, which means that actually you cannot blame one political side or another.
Yeah, exactly.
It's literally something that we have to deal with.
Yeah, exactly.
From outside our own borders.
Yeah.
And so this was a call that he made that said, listen, everybody, let's stop for a second and let's focus on this. Let's stop politicizing everything. This is not a political issue. This is a national issue. It's a national emergency. We got to focus. So he's talking to the private sector. He's talking to the government. He's making sure that everybody's aligned as possible to make sure that we get on our shores.
Yeah, and get the energy efficiency and conservation up, work from home.
Yes.
Being thoughtful about oil and gas expenditure so that there's time for new supply to ramp up and hopefully the crisis to resolve.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
It depends on other people.
Yeah.
Other person.
Person. Yeah, so I think that's where we're at. And I think it's quite interesting also to compare some of those moves as well. I think it's interesting to hear about the Philippines having oil and gas fields, which makes sense. I don't think most people historically think of Philippines as having oil and gas.
But we don't export it, right? It's all for us.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Not enough for, it's not even enough for us.
But one of the things that I've learned is that there's a lot of resources offshore, right? There was an announcement recently as well for, I think he announced the resumption of negotiations with China around jointly developing some of the offshore oil and gas fields in the disputed waters.
I would say that would be the subject of the dispute. So in many ways, it's, here we go. We're starting, I think the exact words he said is like a reset of the relationship.
Yeah.
Cool. But let's, I mean, it's always a touchy subject. Yeah. Maybe it takes a national emergency to reset, to rework on a relationship. I think at the end of the day, we want to have good relationships with everybody.
Yeah.
Right? With everybody. We want the rule of law to be followed. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we have energy security. And if we can find the thin line that connects all those three things together, why not? Right?
Yeah.
Why not?
And I think the subtext that I didn't know was that there were previous talks, and then this current administration canceled that set of talks with China. But now the talks have been resumed, right? I wouldn't be putting betting odds on it. It'll be difficult. But, there's no harm talking, I think, and trying to figure out whether a path works for everybody.
Certainly not. I think we'd be all very hopeful. I think the Philippines is a very interesting strategic location. Right. And I think if we can really thread that line of diplomacy, of business, politics, and create healthy relationships with all parties involved, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
It sounds like this, off the top of my head, very high level. I'm not a diplomat, I'm not anything, but I can imagine, of course, for the Philippines, it's energy security and supplies, development, capital. Also for China, it's an opportunity of oil and gas that doesn't flow through the Straits of Hormuz, doesn't go through the Straits of Malacca. So there's also diversification for them as well. I think a deal could be made. Yeah, I think.
Let's open up a line of communication at the very least, right?
Yeah. So
I think the world sorely lacks lines of communication these days, which is so weird to me, by the way.
Yeah.
You ever thought about that?
Isn't that email or WhatsApp or WeChat? It's so easy to talk to each other these days, right?
There's so much social media in this world. There's so much. It's so easy to create lines of communication. In fact, social media was created so that you could communicate easier with everybody, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was thinking about this morning because I attended a talk about actually American politics and how divided they are. And this thought came about where I was thinking 20 years ago, we were all so excited about Facebook, about Friendster, right? All these different things.
I remember Friendster.
I went Asian there. MySpace. The excitement was really because we were able to communicate to a mass audience faster.
Yeah.
Our old high school friends, whatever it might be, people we hadn't connected with in so long. And that thought of connecting better, faster, somehow over the last 20 years has changed and it's devolved almost. I wouldn't say evolved because evolved is a positive sentiment. Devolved into this place where we all actually divide ourselves by clans, by cliques, by whatever it is. And actually lines of communication have broken down.
Yeah.
In the last 20 years, lines of communication have broken down. This is why the US is so politically divided. This is probably why places like the Philippines is also very politically divided. Because nowadays, we naturally think about, like, we're just fed this idea that our idea is correct, whatever it might be. This is the color orange. And then everybody else is like, yeah, that's the awesome color of orange. That's the best color of orange ever. But then there's going to be one person that's not orange, dude. That's brown.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You're going to block that person, or you're going to like thumbs them down or cry emoji. It's going to be a negative reaction.
I think the guy who says that it's actually brown and not orange will probably get a lot of comments saying that he sucks.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
It's funny. So this talk I attended this morning was a pollster out of the US. And he was saying he's had a chance to speak to the American president a couple of times. And he was saying, I'll tell you something that a lot of people don't realize. And I was thinking, okay, this is going to be something interesting. He said that the president looks at polls, because somebody asked, does the president look at polls? Does he react to the polls? And the answer was yes, he does react to the polls. But the only thing is he only looks at the polls of the people who support him.
Ah, interesting.
And that's going to be the case for everybody. 100%. You, me, everybody. I'm only friends with the people I want to be friends with on Facebook. I'm only friends with the people that I want to be friends with on Instagram.
No, that's interesting.
And think about the point of decision making that happens at that point, right? It's a self-reinforcement. People are just like, yeah, you're doing the right thing. And you just go down that path.
Yeah. You can call it coalition building or tribal, but that's a really interesting insight.
And this is why communication has broken down, despite the fact that today we are the most connected generation in the world.
And it's interesting because we're talking about like energy and all this other stuff. I think it's interesting to see also some of the neighbors in terms of reactions, right? I think we mentioned, for example, Malaysia and Brunei are both energy exporters. So
Yeah, those guys are good.
They are good.
They're good.
They're hanging. People want to buy more of their stuff, so prices are going up. So that's one. I think obviously Singapore is interesting because it's a huge oil and gas refinery hub. So I think it's still able to get supplies from everywhere.
Still good.
So still be able to get covers on energy. Of course, there's
And the
gonna be
needs
impact.
are much lower too, if you think about it, because the population is smaller,
Exactly.
the island is smaller.
Exactly. But of course, it still has an impact on the economy because the downstream refining parts is you need volume to make your plastics and your jet fuel, etc. So there's impact on the economy still. So more mixed. And of course, I think countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, even Korea and Japan are similar to Philippines by needing a lot of oil and gas. So it's been interesting. Another thing that's interesting was Vietnam just announced they're going to install a nuclear reactor, a Russian-supported nuclear power plant. Very interesting.
Wow.
First
I mean,
country in Southeast Asia to commit to a nuclear power plant.
That's a lot to unpack. I can't imagine that was because of this kind of oil and energy crisis that's happening right now. I can imagine that it's been a long time coming, that they've planned this for a long time. But I think it's a lot to unpack because it's going to impact their economy. It's going to impact their politics, I think. It's going to impact the global perception of Vietnam as well.
Yeah.
And when you told me that, I was like, this is different. This is different. The Philippines has tried to have its own nuclear power. We even have a decommissioned power plant that never came on board called Bataan, Bataan. I think it's there. And it was really an attempt by the current president's father. But I mean, there's a lot of great things about nuclear power. One, of course, is that it's much cheaper.
Yeah.
But in a place like the Philippines where we are deep in the ring of fire,
Ooh, all those earthquakes, tsunamis, and that triggered the Fukushima disaster that caused a huge anti-nuclear backlash.
yeah, man, I was there.
Yeah.
I wasn't in Fukushima, but I was in Tokyo. That earthquake.
Oh no.
So I saw that thing happening
Yeah.
in real time.
Oh, boy.
And that was extremely scary.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Extremely scary.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine the Philippines going through something like that. And actually, on the other side of it, is bouncing back as quickly as Japan did.
Yeah.
Because Japan actually, I remember leaving in 2011. I think it was 2 days after, and being like, okay, it's going to be crazy out here for a while.
Yeah.
I went back 2 months later, and everything was like normal.
Yeah. Wow. They're very resilient. They have a huge civil
Unbelievable.
emergency response. Everyone knows their drills. It's
Unbelievable. And if you paste that onto the Philippine experience, would that happen here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any country is as prepared as Japanese to the Philippines is. I don't know. It's like Japan is like the A stars to
It comes out of efficiencies, and I think Japan is like
Yeah.
Number one, top efficiency. And then
Japanese
Singapore
engineer versus Singapore
efficiency.
engineer. You choose the Japanese engineer.
Yeah, I mean, it's not,
like,
it can't be that far away at this point. But the Philippine engineer, actually, I really trust the Philippine engineer, but I don't trust the processes for the Philippine engineer.
I know
Let's
what
put
you're
it that.
saying,
You know what I mean? That's, I think, the biggest challenge in the Philippines. It's not the talent; it's the process.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting time. And I think with Vietnam going nuclear, I think it's going to cause a lot of countries to reevaluate. I think Indonesia has stated that they're interested. That's one. They also did purchase or bring in an aircraft carrier, actually. Yeah.
The Indonesians did.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So interesting. I think Singapore has commissioned a study also reviewing nuclear energy.
Okay.
It's interesting. I think for Singapore it's different because there's no space for hydropower or wind power, right? And there's not enough space for solar cells because it rains all the time. So you have oil and gas, and then if you make a commitment like the government did to like net zero carbon by a certain date, then actually nuclear energy seems like one of the few approaches. So I think is this because there's only so many types of energy sources you can have, right?
That's right.
So I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic.
Could be interesting, right?
Yeah.
The Philippines, what can I tell you about the Philippines and power? One of the things that I think the government is finally realizing is that as an archipelago, it's actually quite difficult to transmit power.
Right. Yeah, you can't put a power line across the island to island and then you have this like cable stretching over. Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah.
And I think Indonesia is the same way, right? But I think the Philippines, and this goes back to, I think, our original conversation all this time ago, where I think the Philippines is developing a little bit later in the curve than everybody else. We do get these realizations, positive realizations, and I think we do get an opportunity to act on these positive realizations. And one positive realization that was that, okay, we're actually the perfect type of island for renewable energy.
Yeah. You got the solar cells, they could work, it's distributed.
Yeah. And of course, as you're correct, right? In Singapore, solar is probably not as efficient because of the rain. Plus, here's an interesting fact that I just realized, I think 2 days ago. Singapore and the Philippines is actually in the same time zone, right? Yeah. But in Singapore, what time does your sun come up? Like 6:30?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Here, sometimes it comes up at 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
And so because of that, we actually are able to derive more power from solar, from every single solar cell.
Yeah.
So it actually is a little bit more of an efficient energy source for us than it is to somebody like Singapore.
Yeah, and you got the open space. I don't think Singapore has space to have solar farms. We just don't have space we don't even have space for agricultural farms.
Yeah.
Solar farm, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So the government is actually, I've been told directly that this is, again, one of these kind of priority projects for the government is to get kind of renewable energies really online. Yeah. So wind farms, solar farms, it all makes sense.
It makes sense to the Philippines. You got space, and you have a distributed set of requirements that make it difficult. I mean, it's why gas has been top for the Philippines because it's easy to bring gas from an island to island on a boat, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly right.
Yeah.
So I think, again, along this theme of developing a little bit later, but seeing seeing what things work, what things don't in other parts of the region, I think we can look forward to at least some work towards that. And even with this national emergency, I think that's exactly the direction we'll wind up going after all of this. I was telling you that we as a fund, for example, we see things as cycles, and this is certainly a cycle, right? We're in the midst of probably a short-term cycle with this oil crisis and energy crisis. But when you look further out into what's the result of this cycle, one is obviously we're probably going to be much better about our oil security in the future, and two is that there's probably going to be a lot of conversation around, okay, we've already looked at renewables. We've already looked at all these other power sources. Should we just start putting these things online in mass, in scale? That's my outlook on what's the positive things. Yeah. I'm always an optimist. I can always talk about the negative stuff, but I don't like to.
This is actually talking about what is the investment thesis to some extent, what things change. And I think obviously one is nuclear power is tailwind for nuclear power, tailwind for renewables and solar cells. I assume it's also probably a thumbs up for battery storage to help the power grids in the Philippines.
That's right.
I guess the question in my head is that going to be an issue because a lot of the solar cells and batteries, a lot of it technology-wise or manufacturing-wise comes from China. Would that be an issue or it's okay? We allow that to be a supplier?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
What I do know is, just to give some example of China supplying the Philippines with something that maybe we don't know if they should or not. On the consumer side, Chinese electric vehicles in this country have exploded.
Yeah.
I think they went from specifically one brand, BYD, went from like nobody knowing it
Yeah.
to owning a huge percentage, at least the EV market,
Yeah.
and potentially the entire automobile market in a short period of time, like 3 years.
Yeah.
So if there was any concern about importing Chinese technology into the Philippines, I think it's been alleviated by the fact that a large chunk of Filipino automobile consumers today are already using Chinese technology.
And it is interesting to hear about how I think China is focused on left-hand drive versus right-hand drive markets.
yeah.
Yeah, because Singapore is.
I never thought about that. Yeah, you're right.
China and the Philippines share a similar, like, same side of the road for
Yeah.
driving. So at least you don't have to manufacture.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. But yeah,
Singapore is not going to get it apparently anytime soon because
Okay.
we're on the other side of the road.
you're missing out. They're great cars.
I would like to try a Xiaomi car. Xiaomi, are you listening? It was like next time, it's like you see you and I, we're like, oh, we're at a Xiaomi car doing a podcast.
Oh, that'd be cool.
With our 360 audio sound.
Oh, next
Right?
time we'll do it inside the car.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Xiaomi, are you listening?
There we go. We can be BYD as well.
BYD, you listening? They probably are. They probably are listening.
I think it's interesting because I think Singapore's seeing that as well. I think BYD, I think it used to be Toyota, used to be number one car brand, obviously, and then it's become BYD as well.
Yep.
And it's interesting because in Singapore, like there's a 10-year, it's called Certificate of Entitlement, COE.
Yes.
So basically,
Heard about
every
this.
car pretty much has to be scrapped or renewed every 10 years.
Yes.
So I think Singapore started late because there's no subsidies for electric vehicles, but I think by effectively in about 7 years, every car's going to be effectively electric because of that requirement of that licensing being renewed.
Yeah.
The cars are probably going to get renewed. So Singapore's actually going through a tremendous S-curve on EV as well right now.
I think similar to the Philippine experience. Actually, I'm thinking about it as you speak, and even this oil crisis is probably going to spur a lot more kind of purchases towards electric vehicles. Even though obviously in the short term it makes a lot of sense because it's I don't have to go to a gas station, but still our power might get more expensive later on, or it already is. But the Philippines does have subsidies, not subsidies. It's actually just a tax break from buying electric vehicles here. Plus we have a lot of different additional like perks.
Yeah.
And so EV adoption here has taken off.
I mean, if you can imagine somebody's making a calculation, be like, okay, I have my solar cells, which cost me a certain amount, and then I plug it into my car with a battery, home battery. It's going to make sense. Then you add a Starlink satellite to it.
Then you're good.
Then you're off the grid.
Then
you got everything. You can do everything you want.
That's true.
Like,
I mean, that would be the dream. Solar panels for the consumer in this country hasn't taken off as well as it should yet. I think it's still a little bit expensive for the consumer. But the way that the private sector has been helping out is actually, and this is my own experience even, the charging stations in some malls in this country are still free. In fact, when they rolled it out, it was all free. And the charging stations are specifically placed in very attractive locations. It's close to the entrance and all this different stuff.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Just to attract more people to use EVs. So I think it's an interesting private-public effort to get people moving towards ease as well in this country.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You just made me realize that my kids, when they grow up, they're going to be like treating the internal combustion engine like the steam engine.
Yeah.
Be like, every car has that smooth acceleration. And what's the stick shift?
Yeah, exactly. What is this? What? It's not even automatic anymore. Can you imagine? It's not even because it's just straight acceleration with an EV, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't actually even because even automatic usually changes gears.
I know.
So this is going to be an interesting experience. Like my kids, I have one EV.
Yeah.
My kids, eventually I'm about to switch to another EV for a second car. So these kids are gonna
no idea.
They're gonna have no idea what an internal combustion engine is.
Yeah. We're gonna sound like old people talking. I was like, remember those days when we had to pump petrol at the station and think about how many dollars per gallon of gas.
Gas, Dad, what is that? Who needs that?
I have a power strip and a USB-C cord. I can power my phone and my car.
Exactly. I just can plug it in. You just need a little. That's the dream. That would be the dream.
Yeah, it will be. And just curious, any other verticals you think will change, or does it change any of your investment thesis for this cycle? Yeah.
Good question. And you used the right word, cycle, right? We think of everything as a cycle, right? And there's short-term cycles, long-term cycles, the oil crisis, COVID, all these different things. There were short-term to mid-term cycles in our mind.
Yeah.
But the fund is a 10-year fund. We can't change our mandate for something that could potentially be a week long, or it could be 3 years long too, by the way. How do I put this? Foxmont, I always say it's in solutions. I think my team probably is so tired of me saying it, but we invest in solutions more so than innovation. Innovations, in my mind, my personal mind, and I don't speak on behalf of Foxmont here, but in my personal mind, innovation can be trendy. It's like, oh yeah, blockchain, NFTs, let's
Digital
go.
land.
Yeah, a digital land. Metaverse, right? $6 billion into the metaverse. Was it 60 billion? I can't even remember.
It was a lot of money.
Into the metaverse, right? So that was an innovation, and it was, in my mind, like very trendy. And now the trend is gone, and so is all that money.
Yeah.
And I like to say we invest in solutions because we want to invest in things that Filipinos need, no matter what the cycle is. So Foxmont Fund 3, which is the one that we're deploying from now, does that. We talk about it in the context of affordability and accessibility. These are core things that Filipinos need. We always think about our investments under this framework of the Maslow's hierarchy, in which we spoke a lot about in our report last year, a little bit in our report this year, which actually just came out last week. And the Maslow's hierarchy, what we understand about the Philippines is that we do have an emerging middle class. We do have a growing middle class. And they are asking for more options. Simple things. We invested in gyms.
Yeah.
Gyms. Bricks, mortar, simple concept. Build it, they will come. But we made it more accessible than what is currently available right now in terms of the membership fees. So in the Philippines right now, and again, I'll put this in the context of coffee and makeup and supplements. Those three things, by the way, sound super random, but we've invested in all three. And what we've seen in all of them is that in coffee, in makeup, and in supplements, there's a foreign brand that is a little bit expensive for the Philippines. And then there's this local generational brand that has been around since like our grandparents that is like super cheap. But there's nothing in between.
Yeah.
But we have a middle class, a young middle class that is like, I don't want to buy my mother's or grandfather's whatever. And I can't afford this nice, beautiful foreign thing. And that's the same thing with the gyms. Right? So we invested in gyms. The first one already opened 2 weeks ago.
And what's the full name of the gym?
It's called BeFit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's HVLP, like high value, low price gym. Huge gyms. We're talking 1,500 square meters.
All right.
1,500 square meters. Okay. If you actually asked a Filipino like 10 years ago if they would go to a gym, you might get a few people saying yeah. You might get a few Filipinos that are like, yeah, I'll check it out. But if you ask them today, most Filipinos, especially young Filipinos, will say that they want to work out. So 1,500 square meter gym, over 100 machines, $20 per month, okay, $20 US dollars, excuse me. So 1,000 pesos. We've had thousands of signups.
Yeah.
Thousands of signups. This is not a trendy thing.
Yeah.
This is not something that people are going to simply forget and they're just not going to do it anymore. Again, not an innovation, a solution. There is a problem. You can't go to a gym here that's affordable. This is the solution. Today, the first gym has something like 2,000 people that go to the gym on a daily basis. It's 24/7.
Wow.
Even at 3, 4 in the morning, they have something like 20 or 30 people going to the gym.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
This is a country, by the way, that does operate 24 hours, right? Because of our BPO sector. And so if they want to go to the gym at 3 in the morning, they have an affordable place to go to the gym at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
That's affordability. Accessibility. We also invested in a female-focused clinic called Eluvo. Eluvo. Accessibility is a problem in this country, especially medical access. You have to think about it as like hospitals are the heart and soul of everything here right now.
Yeah.
You go to the hospital for 100% of the things you need, right? Because the doctors hold office there. That's of course where you get your operations. That's also where you get your tests.
Yeah.
These things are little cities on their own. The problem is, in my mind, especially in Metro Manila, okay, and this is a little bit the case in the provinces as well, but more so in Metro Manila, the problem is that the average commuter in Manila, it's 4 hours a day to commute into the office and out. You're sitting in traffic, you're going through these things. Like, it's crazy, right? Let's say you have to go to the hospital instead. And then you layer on like lining up in the hospital because there's so many other people. It becomes inaccessible. So we invested in a female-focused clinic that just focuses on what they call talk, test, treat. Everything you need in these clinics. It's outside of the hospital. It's in these kind of easily accessible areas. And you are able to see an OBGYN right away. Yeah. You can get your test right on site. And you can get treated basically on site, right? Yeah. Unless it's like an operation or you need to like give birth. That I think legally you have to go to a hospital. But at the very least, if it's something else, you are probably able to get everything you need in your one visit. Additionally, they have a partnership with a Singaporean business actually called Gen Prime, which is fertility. And I think the Philippines right now, without Gen Prime, without Eluvo, I think we only have 9 fertility clinics here.
What?
Yeah. For a population of, a population of 115 million people.
Sorry, your optimist case would be like, there's no infertility problem in Philippines. That would be one like optimistic read about it. But from a reality perspective, like there must be so many couples struggling with infertility and other issues who are underserved.
Exactly.
It's horrible.
Exactly. And a lot of that has to do with the perception of fertility in this country. A lot of people within my social circle, people that I know, if they have to go to see a fertility clinic, they'll go abroad and they'll go to San Francisco, they'll go to Singapore. And it's two reasons. One is it's a little bit inaccessible here, but the other is, of course, there is a reputation thing here too. It's like people have very conservative concepts about what fertility means. But we believe that with this younger generation, that's probably going to change. And we do believe, as you so correctly put, there's a massive need for it. I spoke to a family office in Vietnam that told me that there's literally like fertility buildings, buildings full of fertility clinics, each floor that are on the outskirts of Vietnam. And people will travel out to those fertility clinics. It was family planning, just so they could do their family planning. Yet here, there's only 9 clinics.
I mean, does that fill up a floor?
Affordability, accessibility. Our third investment, I can't announce it exactly yet, which one it is, but actually it's also bricks and mortar, creates accessibility for electronics. Makes what is considered to be expensive luxury electronics in this country much more accessible. And so when we think about it that way, we're providing solutions to the Filipino, right? People ask me all the time about AI. Hey, have you found any AI deals? And by the way, we have been pitched AI in this country, and some of them is very interesting use cases, right? However, while we're not close to it, I do think of AI as an innovation right now versus a solution.
Enabling technology rather than a solution in itself.
So you're right, exactly right. Thank you for putting it exactly in that right context. The AI that we see in this country is really creating more efficient processes within some of our startups, right? eTaily, one of our startups from Fund 2, does a great job of using AI to fix up and clean up their internal processes. Sourcey, another one, amazing job using AI. But AI as its business on its own, we're still forming a solid thesis on it in the context of the Philippines.
I think there's so much opportunity. And so on that note, I'd love to summarize the 3 big takeaways from the conversation. First, thanks so much for sharing about the energy emergency that was declared. And as we shared, this is something that's an external shock to all of the economies in Southeast Asia. I think it took political courage to declare it and focus people's mind on it. And I think better to get ahead of it than to declare it later and not manage it well. So I think this is a great opportunity to unite and solve the problem in a cohesive way. Secondly, thanks for sharing about how you see the dynamics for the Filipino economy in terms of energy security, in terms of verticals, in terms of what needs to be done, for example, in terms of solar cells, electric vehicles, power distribution, in order for Philippines to achieve energy, not necessarily interdependence or independence, but at least some sort of more energy security, right? I think that's a fascinating angle that I think none of us were thinking about 3 months ago. And lastly, thanks so much for sharing a little bit about what you still think are the lasting principles of this cycle, right? And it's looking past the 1 week headline cycle, news cycle, versus the 6-month macro push, but really investing on a 10-year cycle. It's hard to keep your head screwed on straight and see clearly and also still be optimistic about all of that. So thanks so much for sharing about Foxmont's investment approach during this time.
You're welcome, Jeremy. Thank you for having me. I hope my insanely optimistic views are at least received warmly by your audience.
And I think in 10 years, we'll find out if you're right. We're living in a cave in the sticks and stones. We're so wrong.
We're not using microphones anymore. We're like literally just talking to each other. Franco was so wrong.
We'll be very happy and it was good.
We'll be in like flying cars.
Flying cars.
That use solar.
Our kids will be using electric vehicles asking, hey, Dad, what's a stick shift? On that note, let's wrap up and close it out.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. We would also appreciate you leaving a rating or review. Head over to www.bravesea.com for member content, resources, and community. Stay well and stay brave.